From the very beginning, our focus has been on making this city affordable. We launched this campaign, now it's been 7 months ago, on October 23rd. And what we said at the launch day is what we have said every single day. This is the most expensive city in the United States of America, the third most expensive city in the world. And 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. And we know that that figure is even greater amongst many South Asian communities across this city, including Bangladeshi New Yorkers. And yet we have seen a city government that has time and time again only sought to exacerbate this cost of living crisis as opposed to bring it to an end. So we have said that we will freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent stabilized tenants. We will make the slowest buses in the country fast and free. And we will deliver universal childcare to every New Yorker, whether their child is 6 weeks or 5 years of age. That is our focus. And our plan throughout the entire election has been to win the race. In a city of about 8.5 million people, close to 2.5 million live in rent-stabilized housing. This median household income of these tenants is about $60,000. Now, whether the rent increases or it stays the same is decided by the Rent Guidelines Board. It's a board composed of 9 appointees. The mayor appoints every single one of those 9. This last year, the board found that landlord profits were up 12%. And when you look at this data, it is very clear that these tenants who are on the brink of being pushed out of the city that they're building are ones that are deserving of relief. And so when we say a rent freeze, it means that a tenant, what they are paying in rent this year, that's what they should be paying in rent next year. Now, if you're a landlord who is concerned about your ability to keep up with your costs, there is a program that exists that provides relief to landlords who show their books and show the ratio of their cost to income. And if it is one that is too burdensome to sustain, as per the guidelines of that program, then they are eligible for relief. And I will also be working to ensure that that is a more efficient program. It is a program that is easier to navigate, and ultimately that we also do everything we can to keep other costs for these same landlords down, be it the costs of Con Edison, the costs of the water bill, the costs of property taxes. Because what we've seen is we've had a mayor in Eric Adams who has called himself real estate, but when it comes to supporting so many of these small landlords across New York City, he has increased their costs time and time again, and we have to bring that to an end. I have said over the course of this campaign that I'm interested in exploring a residential parking permit program. It's something that's been suggested by many as a way in which we can ensure that these parking spaces that do exist are ones also that New Yorkers who live in those neighborhoods can actually use. And I've also heard from many New Yorkers that they have had to buy a car because of how difficult it is for them to use public transit, especially when they live further in the outer boroughs. And so I will also be running a city that will make it easier to use public transit, make it more convenient, make it more affordable. Because what we found is when we offer that to New Yorkers, like I saw when I won the first fare-free bus pilot in New York City history. I made 1 bus route free in each borough. We saw 11% of the new riders got out of their car or the taxi they were taking and got on the bus. So when that is happening, it means 1 less car on the road, 1 more parking spot open, and 1 more person being served by public transit. I would stand up for our sanctuary city status. It is a status that Republicans and Democrats have defended for decades until Eric Adams became the mayor and fear-mongered about this very status. It's also a set of policies that have made New York safer, as we have seen over the years, because the basis of the idea of a sanctuary city policy is to encourage undocumented New Yorkers to come out of the shadows and engage with our local government. And we've seen that as they do that, we have a safer city for all. And so much of the fear-mongering we hear from this current mayor, from our current president, it elides over the fact that there are already 170 serious crimes within that sanctuary city status that allow for the very kind of communication to take place from a local government to a federal government, and yet it is being used to justify the attack on sanctuary cities. It is both baseless, it is something that would make us less safe, and it is something that is against the law, and that's why I will fight back against those attacks.
What will be the fight?
The fight is a few things. We have a mayor right now who has refused to follow the law. The law as it stands in New York City is that we do not allow ICE agents into New York City schools, hospitals, properties, or even properties of city contractors unless they provide a signed judicial warrant signed by a judge. And I sit on the city's committee in the state assembly. I have 3 minutes every year to question the mayor. This year, the first question I asked him is, will you let New Yorkers know this is the law? Will you follow this law? And he pushed that question to the law department. You don't need to be a lawyer to know that we have to follow the laws of the city. And that is something I will do as a mayor. I will also establish an oversight commission to ensure 100% compliance with our sanctuary city policies. And furthermore, I am going to start to defend our undocumented New Yorkers who are being put in the process of detention and deportation proceedings by starting to provide legal representation in those kinds of proceedings. Because what we're seeing is just the mere act of having a lawyer increases your chances of being reunited with your family by 11 times. And we need to keep New Yorkers together. We can see that under Eric Adams, total crime has risen. And that is both borne out in the statistics, and it's also something that when you ask New Yorkers, you can feel their anxiety about. And oftentimes, when I ask about where New Yorkers feel least safe, they tell me it's the subway system. And that's why we have put together a proposal to create the Department of Community Safety, the DCS. It would be a new department within city government, because we know police have a critical role to play in creating public safety. And yet we are relying on them to respond to almost every single failure of the social safety net. And that reliance is preventing them from doing their actual jobs, focusing on the major 7 categories of crime. And you can see that in the very low levels of clearance rates for each of those categories. And so what we are proposing here is to put an end to asking police officers to do the work of social workers and mental health professionals, and to instead allow them to focus on those major 7 categories and hire those very professionals who are best situated and trained to respond to these crises. So at the core of our Department of Community Safety is a focus on 5 things: mental health crisis, homelessness, gun violence prevention, hate violence, and victim services. And when we're talking about the subways, it would mean deploying teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers to the 100 subway stations with the highest levels of mental health crises and homelessness, and connecting those New Yorkers to the services they need.
So instead of police personnel, you are talking about the crisis managers.
Yes, when it comes to dealing with mental health. Because what I've heard from police as well, they have to deal with 500 mental health calls a day, 200,000 a year. And dealing with that number of calls means they cannot respond to the other calls about the actual major 7 categories of crime. And when we look at a place like Oregon, they had a program they started where they would divert these calls out of the police department to mental health responders. That new department was able to handle 20% of all police calls, which meant that police response time was able to increase elsewhere. That's also what we need to bring here to New York City. We need to make sure that we have a strong social safety net. You know, what we are seeing right now is Republicans in Washington are attacking the very little that is keeping New Yorkers and Americans afloat, whether it's their health care, whether it's their SNAP benefits. We need a mayor who is willing to fight back against Washington, D.C. and ensure that our fabric of our society and our city continues to sustain. And we cannot just fight for the little that we have to also expand that social safety net so it can catch more people before they fall through it. And that also means delivering universal childcare, because we know that many New Yorkers are eager to start families here in our city, and yet they know it is prohibitively expensive to do so. It can cost a family $25,000 to provide childcare for their child. And what we are going to do is to deliver universal childcare, taking that cost off the backs of working families and ensuring that our social safety net is also one that is taking care of our children and our mothers who have to do so much of this work.
Okay, do you think you have so many plans, and that is, some of them are very basic. So do you think you need to change the law as well for making some changes? Or the prevailing law is okay with all these changes?
There are a lot of laws that we have in place that Eric Adams has not been enforcing. There are a lot of laws that are already written, already passed, already codified, and yet we are treating them as if they are just guidance. We need to have a mayor who will follow those laws and also fund these programs. Because the ideas I'm putting forward at the core of the issue is, do you care about this enough to spend this money on working class people? And we do, and Eric Adams has not, and that's the difference on June 24th.
Okay, thank you, Joran. Just tell something to the people, to the voters who are reluctant to keep vote, who don't want to.
Look, I understand why many New Yorkers are reluctant to vote. I understand why many have lost their faith in politics, because many have been disappointed time and time again. And I have felt some of that disappointment myself. What we are offering on June 24th is a true change, one that will bring in a new generation of leadership that will actually usher in a more affordable city. And Bangladeshi New Yorkers know this very well, because you can look 20, 30 years ago. Even then, there were articles being written about how Astoria was becoming too expensive, such that Bangladeshi New Yorkers had to move to Detroit. If that was true in 2000, we know that is true today in 2025. We need a city where people do not have to leave in order to live their life.
Thank you, Joran.
Thank you very much.